Okay, and we are live. So, we're just gonna wait for I think 10 more seconds, and then, yeah, we'll get going. Um, Hang on, I just need to hide something because I'm seeing myself and it's a bit, distracting. Right, so. Let us come over here and do that. Awesome. Cool. Okay, so this is governance. Hello and welcome to governance, or the governance program on cast.live. The idea here is pretty straightforward. It's actually the name. Oh, excuse me. Yeah, it's conversations about governance and yeah, where to begin, how to develop, and where we hope to get to. So this specific stream that I'm going to be doing today is a lot more focused on just sort of providing like a primary experience. This is a conversation which I'm going to be having again with, or a few times with a few folks, but I just thought actually I might as well kind of do this surface level kind of primer of it, and then it'll just sort of get better as I kind of iterate it in conversation with other folks talking about this particular topic. So yeah, as I record this, I've just kind of been on and off paying attention to what's going on in North America, where the politics is just getting weirder and weirder, and there's currently this attempt to impeach, right? To sort of try and invoke, I think, Section 4 of the 25th Amendment for the Vice President to basically sort of take over the President's role. All based on the events that happened on the 6th, right? The attempted insurrection. Right now, whether you believe, there's sort of two sides of the story, or as with every story, this story is what has two sides. Whether you believe the mass mainstream media narrative, which is, folks on the right attempted an insurrection, or whether you believe, the sort of opposing side of the story, which is it was a staged event, conveniently for as a play for public sympathy, basically. One thing is clear: trust has eroded, and now more than ever we need communication, right? I think this is quite poignant, right? Talking about community moderation. Well, initially it was content moderation, but I've sort of changed it to community moderation for reasons which I'll expand on in a moment. But this is basically, in essence, addressing the idea of deplatforming, right? Because if you think about it, it's really, it's basically the irony of deplatforming. It's really counterintuitive to solving a problem, because central to governance, central to understanding, is communication. And like what the the most backward thing you can do when you're trying to understand someone is to try and basically muzzle them. Yeah, and so I suppose that's kind of the macro, on a micro level. On on a micro level, closer to home, this is an issue which I've, personally been sort of trying to have conversations about and trying to arrive at at a practical solution of within our community, where we're having people who are hired to be good stewards of the discourse that is happening within the community, and they are not, their incentives are misaligned with that of the community, right? These are people who are doing a job, and part of that job has to, arguably you could say, has to do with showing that you're doing a job, right? So you'd even have situations where nothing is particularly happening, but to be able to prove that you are moderating, you need to intervene. I suppose a good reference here is the idea that to a hammer, everything is a nail, right? So that's kind of part of the issue here. So anyway, so as I said, this is a primer on transparency and accountability, using a particular framework. And as I said earlier, I'm excited to actually have ongoing conversations about this and other topics regarding governance. And I think within the week I'm gonna have 3 different conversations, if all goes well, and then in the near future more of them, and one of them hopefully including actually with someone who I've admired, who's been doing some law or legal related stuff within crypto. So who have actually started to have a conversation about just sort of need to sort of firm that up and be able to get him and have that conversation. So anyway, so part of the solution, some of the ideas or some of the solutions that I've sort of been exploring, like for example this idea of having some sort of autonomous accountability system, right? You can imagine that across the different platforms that the community sort of operates across. At the moment they're centralized. It would be interesting again to explore even within that environment, centralized environment, and as we sort of transition to a decentralized environment, and then on a sort of bigger, broader scale, the idea of diplomacy, right, and diplomats. That's sort of like a different sort of slant or angle. And now, so in the context of this, right, community moderation, you'll see as we move to actually looking into this particular framework, or the text within this framework, which outlined 3 different points that they suggest big tech be accountable and sort of publish information within these 3 particular points or categories. They talk about content, and in me just sort of thinking about this, I decided to just tweak it a little bit and make it community moderation, right? Because if you think about it, the community are the ones who are generated, the ones who are expressing, and the ones who are sort of receiving those expressions, right? They are both the input and output, right? The content itself is in a way agnostic to a certain extent, right? And some people might want to be exposed to some content, some might not. So I feel like within the context of how I would like to look at it, also break it down, would be through the community as opposed to content. So yeah, let's just quickly, if this will work. Oh jeez, come on, don't let me know. No, there we go. Okay. So the Santa Clara principles, this is a framework, I could just move this a little bit to the side. Okay, right. The Santa Clara Principles on Transparency and Accountability in Content Moderation. These principles are meant to serve as a starting point, outlining minimal levels of transparency and accountability that we hope can serve as a basis for a more in-depth dialogue in the future. Okay, so on the occasion of the first Content Moderation at Scale conference in Santa Clara, California on February the 2nd, 2018, a small private workshop of organization advocates and academic experts who support the right to free expression online was convened to consider how best to obtain meaningful transparency and accountability around internet platforms' increasingly aggressive moderation of user-generated content. Now, on the occasion of the sentence, Kafkaesque. Now, on the occasion of the second Content Moderation at Scale conference in Washington, D.C. on May 7th, 2018, we proposed these three principles as initial steps that companies engaged in content moderation should take to provide meaningful due process to impacted speakers and better ensure that the enforcement of their content guidelines is fair, unbiased, proportional, and respectful of users' rights. So that's a general idea there. I won't dwell on it too long. Because my intention is for this to be a short video, as my intention is with all of these, but they end up being way too long. So the first one is numbers. Companies should publish numbers of posts removed and accounts permanently or temporarily suspended due to violations of their content guidelines. At a minimum, this information should be broken down along each of these dimensions: total number of discrete posts and accounts flagged, total number of discrete posts removed and accounts suspended, number of discrete posts and accounts flagged, and number of discrete posts removed and accounts suspended by category of rule violated, number of discrete posts and accounts flagged, number of discrete posts removed and accounts suspended by format of content at issue, e.g. text, audio, image, video, live stream, number of discrete posts and accounts flagged, number of discrete posts removed and accounts suspended by source flag, e.g. governments, trusted flaggers uses different types of automated detection. And then lastly, number of discrete posts and accounts flagged and number of discrete posts removed and accounts suspended by locations of flaggers and impacted users where apparent. So all of that information would actually make for an interesting breakdown, right? Because they're talking about particular stakeholders like governments, for example, and then things like context, like time or time, I suppose, time and location, and so on. So numbers. I mean, the danger here is, with what big tech have been doing with their diversity numbers is, stats can be framed in very manipulative ways, as anyone who's sort of given it a little bit of thought would have realized. Anyway, this data should be provided in a regular report, ideally quarterly, in an openly licensed machine readable format. And then number two, so number one was numbers, number two is notice. Companies should provide notice to each user whose content is taken down or account is suspended about taken down or account is suspended about the reason for the removal or suspension. Okay, that sounded a bit weird to me, but yeah, you get the general idea there. Basically, the reason why the account is suspended. In general, companies should provide detailed guidance to the community about what content is prohibited, including examples of permissible and impermissible content, and guidelines used by reviewers. Companies should also provide an explanation of how automated detection is used across each category of content when providing a user with notice about why their post has been removed or an account has been suspended. A minimum level of detail for an adequate notice includes, and then yeah, I'm not going to read because it's again like the first one, the numbers one. There's a lot of kind of repetitive content in there, which would make sense to actually just extrapolate into a graphic of sorts, visually, to actually see it represented that way. It would make more sense rather than reading repetitive bits of text. And then again, they go on to say the format matters as well. It should be durable, it should be accessible, even if the user's account is suspended or terminated. Yeah, and then users who flag content should also be presented with the log of content they have reported and the outcomes of moderation processes. Basically, chain of command. Yeah, and then lastly, number three, last but not least, number three is appeal, right? So the concept of redemption. Companies should provide a meaningful opportunity for timely appeal of any content removal or account suspension. So here, bits of copyright sort of start to creep in, right? The concept of copyright, and I suppose things like harassment, and I suppose to some extent maybe national security and stuff like that. Yeah, so there are a whole bunch of sort of different elements. Again, this is quite a different context to what, as a community, especially autonomously, like what we would sort of be approaching. I mean, one of the points which was made a little bit further up was this idea of actually communicating what is required in the first place. Right, that's quite a key thing that I'll come back to in just sort of in my overall summary of all of this. So I'll just reread this bit. Companies should provide a meaningful opportunity for timely appeal of any content removal or account suspension. Minimum standards for a meaningful appeal include. I'll actually read these because they're not that long. Human review by a person or panel of persons that was not involved in the initial decision. An opportunity to present additional information that will be considered in the review. Right, so to provide more evidence or context. And then lastly, notification of the result of the review and a statement of the reasoning sufficient to allow the user to understand the decision. What majority of this big tech at the moment does not follow, right? All they do is say, oh, you what's the word that they like to use, you violated our community guidelines. I mean, as we speak, was it yesterday or the day before yesterday, Senator Ron Paul received that boilerplate response, right, from him being banned or deplatformed from Facebook, I think it was. Yeah. Anyway, in the long term, independent external review processes may also be an important component for users to be able to seek redress. So basically, like a detached entity from the company itself. and this could perhaps take form of like, you know, a local council, you know, of like local hubs, right, where people have a better understanding of what local cultural norms are, and, you know, the sort of, these are residents, right, who'd, you know, be presiding over equals fate in some way. So acknowledgements, basically, it just sort of talks about the folks behind all of this, and yeah. So let's just swing back over here. Yeah. So yeah, I sort of spoke about majority of sort of my sentiments around this particular idea as I kind of read it. In general, I think this is a great reference to sort of start thinking about the idea of content as well as community moderation, and, you know, the next step from here, I think, would make sense to, again, perhaps have more conversations, right, with other folks, and, you know, sort of try and get like a sense of how they think these could be implemented in a way that is accountable, and how we can sort of, in a way, fork this and start to consider how such a similar idea can be implemented within a decentralized community, right? So to do it in a way that, you know, it's basically autonomously accountable, or creating sort of an autonomous accountable framework. Yeah. So yeah, let me know what you think, and yeah, I look forward to actually, you know, having ongoing conversations about this.